I think one of the biggest issues on all of our minds right now is how can we restart the economy and be safe at the same time? As we see the uptick in coronavirus cases in Florida and Arizona and Texas, can we do both?
Yes, we have to. You can't do one without the other, though. You have to address the coronavirus issue, as we have been saying all along. Open our economy. Do so by testing, testing, testing. If you test and you trace and you treat and you isolate, you can contain the virus, you can open the economy. The same holds true for our children going to school. They want to go to school, we want them to go to school, their parents do, teachers want to teach, but you can't risk their health in doing so. And in order to open the schools and the economy, there's a simple solution: testing. And it's worked in other countries. Until, God willing, we have a vaccine or a cure, testing. Now, what I'm calling upon the president to do is to use his authority to execute the Defense Production Act. People are not getting tested enough because there isn't enough equipment. Those tests are not analyzed to find out if you're positive or negative because there isn't enough equipment. The schools are not prepared to open up, and hospitals caring for people because they don't have enough personal protective equipment. And so we're saying just face the fact. I said this morning about the president that he's like a man who refuses to ask for direction. There is direction. The scientists are giving it to us. But we can't fully open up or safely open up unless we address the coronavirus. And it is doable. We're America. We can get anything done we set our minds to do. But we have to follow the science, and we have to do good governance as we follow the science.
All of the experts, as you say, Madam Speaker, say we have to have testing, and then we have to have the contact tracing that follows on after the testing. At the same time, in some places like Florida right now, some of the experts are saying it's so far out of control, you've got to shut it down before you can really even test because there's just too much going on. What can the federal government, what can Congress, what can the president do to try to get people to stay home in some of these places where they need to stay home? You and I both know that.
Well, it has worked in other countries. The shelter in place, the lockdown makes a big, big difference. But the president, it's even hard to get him to wear a mask as a good example. But it would make all the difference in the world, and really in not a very long time, if the president would suggest and not stand in the way of sheltering in place. The lockdown is very important. In California, we locked down, had great improvement, everything good. Our governor just been excellent, Governor Gavin Newsom. And then some of the regions of the state, it's a big state, were objecting, saying, we don't have so much here, let us open up. And so there was some local discretion, which now has demonstrated that that discretion has led to more cases, unfortunately.
Madam Speaker, you raised the question of the schools, which I think is on so many Americans' minds across the country right now as we approach September once again, how we can get our kids back to school in some form, maybe a hybrid form, safely. At the same time, that's going to take a lot of money as a practical matter.
That is.
We're going to have to reconfigure a lot of schools. Where is that money going to come from? Mitch McConnell says he actually might be willing to put up some money for that. Can you come to terms on that at least?
Well, in the HEROES Act, we have $100 billion Education Stabilization Fund specifically for the coronavirus. Much of it for elementary, for K through 12, and then some of it for higher education. Because if you're going to go to school, and again, we want people, all the testing, tracing, et cetera, but you have to have the distancing. And if you're going to be distant 6 feet apart, which you must, then you need more you need more space, you need more teachers, then you need attention to the ventilation system in the schools, as well as testing for not only teachers, but custodians and others. And so instead of the president threatening to withhold money from schools that don't open, he should be granting money to schools so that they can open. Our federal share of education is very small, less than 10%, 8-point-something%, less than 10%. Most of that money is funded by state and local government, and that's why we have in the HEROES Act, the state and local government honor our heroes almost $1 trillion so that state and local government can recover from the the outlays that they have made for the coronavirus to address it, as well as the revenue lost because of the coronavirus. So all of that, state and locals, where over 90% of our education funds come from. So again, it's a lot of money, but it's a small price to pay for the lives and livelihood of our children and the need for them to go back to school in a very safe way. There is a path. As for directions, Mr. President, the scientists can give you some good guidance in this regard. But in the HEROES Act, we anticipated, this was 2 months ago yesterday. 2 months ago yesterday, we passed the HEROES Act with all of those provisions in it about testing, about supporting state and local government, about the Education Stabilization Fund, and other provisions as well. And then since that time, 50,000 more people have died. Many, many more people have become infected. So many more people have become unemployed. This morning we had the 17th straight week of over 1 million people applying for UI, unemployment insurance claims.
As you say, Madam Speaker, it's been 2 months now since the House passed the HEROES Act bill, and that is sort of the fourth wave of the stimulus. We haven't had any response out of the Senate really effectively. We hear Mitch McConnell say he's going to come forward with something next week. What is it going to take to get the two sides together to get something done? Because you have the school situation coming up soon. You also have unemployment insurance, which we're really coming up with in another couple of weeks.
Another couple of weeks that will expire. I have no doubt that they will come around. At the beginning, he said, no, we spent enough money. Now they're at 1.3 trillion. That's not enough. We have 3.4 trillion. As you know, the Fed has spent a good deal of money making sure the stock market is okay, one way or another. Trillions of dollars, actually. And we think if we can bolster the stock market that way, we can, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we should be able to bolster the middle class, our working families. And again, especially when it comes to spending money on education. You know, education brings more money to the Treasury than any other dollar that you can spend. And a great deal of what we have in the HEROES Act is absolutely essential, like direct payments to people, unemployment insurance, and the rest. Because if we don't do that, the recession will only get worse. The virus will even spread further, and just the unhappiness, the suffering of the American people will intensify. We can get this done. The scientists have shown us the way. We need the equipment to do it. The president can, with the stroke of the pen, call upon the Defense Production Act, call upon businesses to focus on the equipment for testing, the equipment for judging the results of those tests, the equipment for personal protection equipment.
Madam Speaker, you said the Republicans will come around, Mitch McConnell and the Republican leadership on the Senate side. Will they do it in time to get this done within the next 2 weeks? What's your level of confidence we will have legislation out within the next 2 weeks?
Well, we're not, let me just say this. We can't go home without it. And so because of the unemployment insurance expiring and the rest of that, we have to have the legislation. It's been 2 months. It's been 2 months. More people have died, more people have gone unemployed, and more people have been infected. What's the value of their waiting? I mean, I know that there's some people who say it's too much money, but as I've said to you before, what we're doing for state and local government is 1/2 of what the Republicans added to the national debt in order to pass their tax scam, which gave 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. We're not a caste system. We have to make sure that we have, as we recognize, a consumer economy, the confidence that people have in order to have money, to spend it, to inject demand into the economy, create jobs. That's what we have to thrive on, and not just depend on some possible trickle down. If it happens, good. If not, so be it. So anyway, we feel pretty confident about it, and there's a lot of enthusiasm because much of the injustice of it all, whether it's economic, health, education, coronavirus specifically, impacts lower income people and people of color in a very disproportionate way. And we know that we must address that. And we must address it especially now when there's just a threat to people's lives, their livelihood, and in fact, the life of our democracy.
Just in conclusion here, Madam Speaker, as you point out, some of the least fortunate in the country have been hit the hardest by the pandemic itself, by the disease, and also by the economic aftermath of that. What can you do to make sure that money gets to those people? Because there are various reports that while some of it has, a lot of it has not.
Well, the direct payments get directly to them, and the unemployment insurance does. We think that the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses, did reach a lot of people, but it had collateral benefit to those who should not have benefited from it. So that was unfortunate. So we have to be very specific in how legislation is written and not just assume that people will do the right thing or the fair thing. But it is, I think, what happened with George Floyd and the hundreds of thousands of people who came out every day, week in and week out, and for a long time, looking for justice in that case in policing, but also the coronavirus was a part of that enthusiasm, that exuberance, and so people expect to see justice done, and including environmental justice. That's why we're moving with our moving forward legislation to include so much of green technologies, because communities of color suffer disproportionately from environmental injustice, clean air, clean water, the list goes on. So this is about justice. I'm fond of quoting St. Augustine, 1,700 years ago, 17 centuries ago, who said any government that does not exist to promote justice is just a bunch of thieves. But we don't want to be considered a bunch of thieves. We want to promote justice. And in the long run, that makes it better for everyone. In fact, in the short run, it does as well. So again, this legislation is lean. I know it's a lot of money, but it's very specific as to what it goes to, honoring our heroes, opening our economy by testing, and money directly into the pockets of the American people.